All right, here we go. Testing, testing. Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn the usual slog from Jamboree to Beach Boulevard.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Pepper. I am speaking to Paul Packler, who looks like he is bundled up in New York City wearing a sweater.
Yeah, this is my Cosby sweater, folks.
Well, okay. I think we have to find a new terminology, don't you?
Yeah, we're going to talk about terminology all this episode. So.
Yeah, we sure are. We sure are. It is the usual slog from Jamboree to Beach Boulevard. This episode is indeed the usual slog, except there's only one difference to this usual slog. It's only half the usual slog.
Woohoo! We have a two-parter, folks. It's what season 6, episode 20. Read It and Weep, part 1.
That's right. When Gary David Goldberg goes after an issue, he really goes after an issue.
Folks, they really tried this time. I want to give them credit. Someone looked up a Supreme Court case and transcribed some of the what the justices wrote.
And yet, I'm going to question every time that information is given to us, what the Supreme Court said. I'm going to question their choice of the character who says it, the way that character says it, and the explanation for that character saying it.
Corey, you know what? It's been 30 years, almost to the day, since this episode premiered. Because it came out, I think, like February 1st or something. So this might be 30 years to the day. But it's interesting because politics makes strange bedfellows, and I kind of agree that this book might not be the best thing to teach in a high school.
Really?
I know. I think this episode we're going to find some interesting who agrees with whom.
Well, we start with the B plot, as it turns out, with Mallory using Andy as her dress model. And they have a couple of scenes, maybe 3 scenes with Andy in a dress. And once again, kudos to Andy. He pulls every single one of his lines off. He's cute as can be. He delivers the lines well, and everything's all good with him.
He had one line that actually made me laugh. I can't remember what it was. Maybe you do, but it actually made me laugh.
I don't know. He delivered everything really, really well, and he played this relatively stupid B plot with him modeling a dress, and it's always Mallory pinning a dress on Andy with him standing on a kitchen counter and Alex walking in on that nonsense. And you can only imagine the anti-feminist rant that Alex goes into every single time.
Yes, it does happen, but it's not as gross as I was assuming it was going to go. They keep it pretty light every time this comes up.
And they keep it light because they use the recurring joke of Alex has a big head and or a small body. I thought, you know what? I thought they were going to go when Mallory was sort of nosing around for the first jokes about Alex not fitting the dress, not being a good dress model. I thought she was going to go for the fact that Alex is short. I thought we were going to go for the standard. You know how when we do in the opposite direction, we always go, Alex makes dumb joke about Mallory. Mallory makes short joke about Alex.
Yeah.
That's the pro quo of their jokes, of the sibling joke rivalry here.
You know what it makes? Oh, sorry. It makes me think, Corey.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is that with runway models, they're supposed to be tall. They're supposed to be very tall runway models. And so it would have been funny if she were like, you know, Alex can't be a model because he's too short. And Andy is obviously shorter than Alex, but just the idea that Alex is too short to be a model would be very fun.
But Andy is perfect for that. But they went with big head and small body, and they sort of kind of rang that out for like a whole bunch of jokes throughout the entire episode, including, you know, Alex tape measuring his head at one point and asking strangers for if he has a big head. I thought it was like, okay, as B plots go, it could have been worse.
Yes. Could have been worse is about where this whole thing goes. I also want to
Yeah.
interject one point. Our fan Damon has been writing to us and saying that Mallory in this episode in particular is dumber than usual. I didn't necessarily feel that way. Did you feel that way?
I totally agree with you. And I was, in fact, I was confused, and I thought, wow, I don't know, Damon's sort of harsh on this one. And I've seen episodes in where they've really dumbed Mallory down, and I think she's just fine. You know, she's in her element when with the dress pinning on Andrew, and I don't think she really does play anything really too dumb.
She
We'll see.
definitely hates reading, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. And we know that. We know she doesn't like to read. We know she didn't get good grades in English, that she failed English, you know, stuff like that. All those dumb jokes. But, you know, what we get into right here is the beginning of the A plot, and that is Jennifer's entrance. And she is really bummed out. It turns out that she needs to write a book report in English class. She's in 11th grade. Needs to write a book report in English class. She wants to write her book report on the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and it's not the adventures of Tom Sawyer. It's Huckleberry Finn, and finds out that the Board of Education in Dayton has banned Huck Finn from the library, and if it's banned from the library, you cannot write a book report about a banned book.
Yeah, I don't. Uh-oh, I'm echoing. Oh boy. It's still happening. Now it's happening less. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so Brian, just edit that part out. Yeah, I don't know. Is that true? I don't think that's necessarily. I don't know, because like if it's banned in the library, they're not going to teach it in the curriculum, or you could not teach it in the curriculum and have it still be in the library. But at this point in the story, Jennifer has chosen that she wants to do this book, even though they're not covering it in class. Like, the students are all picking their own books.
Right.
And this one has been banned from the library and from the curriculum, but she wants to do it.
And of course, it seems as though later on, it seems as though everybody did it on the Yogi Berra story.
Yeah, so this is a dumb joke where they say, so what's left that students can write about at this point?
Right.
And it's the Yogi Berra story and some Babar the elephant story.
That's about it.
And so, yeah, where to begin, Corey? What do you want to talk about? Book banning in public schools and stuff?
I don't believe in censorship of any kind. So, end of discussion.
There you go. You're the Alex P. Keaton in this equation.
Oddly enough, I am. I don't believe that anything should be censored. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't want in the high school library, I don't think the Kama Sutra should be there alongside of, you know, Dr. Alex Comfort's The Joy of Sex. I think we could save that for big boy institutions. But other than that, I don't really think, in terms of literature, I mean, people can find any excuse anywhere to ban anything. I've heard of Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint being banned, which is my favorite book of all time. I can't believe anybody would ban that. I can't believe anyone would ban Joseph Heller's Catch-22, but yet its anti-war sentiment is so intense that it seems almost like a textbook for people trying to get out of serving. There are other books, you know, of modern literature that banned, but you and I probably agree that, you know, if we're banning ideas, then you got to ban the Bible, because it's probably got the worst ideas of any book ever had.
Yeah, like getting drunk and fucking your daughters because your wife turned to a pillar of salt.
Killing your brother.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting, though, because, like, so they actually name check the Supreme Court case that happened in 1982, the Pico case. And like Alex B. Keaton runs through at two different points in the episode what the finding was. And the thing about Pico that makes it so much of a pain in the ass is that it wasn't like a 5-4. It wasn't a 9-0 or anything. It was a total plurality. There were three different opinions. And so schools have the ability to just kind of do whatever they want ever since.
That's right for their communities, I would guess.
Exactly. There's a gray area because there wasn't a definitive
Decision.
Yeah. And so, you already said yourself that things shouldn't be banned ever, but then at the same time, you just said that certain books don't belong in a school, and that's where I think I fall, is obviously some books do not belong in a school, and then where does that happen? Like, what are the types of books?
You said that you thought that this was a good candidate to be banned from a high school library.
No, that's the thing. So I don't think that it should necessarily be banned from a high school library. My contention is I don't think it should be necessarily taught in a classroom.
Why is that?
I think
because of the N-word?
I think because of the N-word, because that like, if you want to talk about slavery, if you want to talk about racism in America, we have better examples and better investigations of those subjects since that time. Like, it's the same thing as saying, like, Freud is all we ever needed to find out about human sexuality and psychoanalysis. Things have gotten better since then. We've found out more interesting and accurate appraisals of the human psychology and stuff like that by building upon that. And so I think there are black writers who can write about racism better than Mark Twain could in 1884.
Because I was going to ask you, I was going to follow up by asking you, well, what about writers of color who eloquently use the N-word with the freedom that only they should have to bandy about the N-word?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that becomes a different topic of conversation too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But I mean, Langston Hughes, you could read if you want to learn about racism in America. You could read Lorraine Hansberry. You could read Richard Wright. You could read tons of writers of color.
All the writers of color that I was thinking of, it was like, really, come on. These are great novelists and playwrights and poets. And I understand that what you're saying is perhaps white Southern Samuel Clemens should not be the arbiter of any kind of singular view of racism in America.
Exactly. That's exactly my point, is that we've gotten to the point that we should say this is an important novel in American history. It's not the text of racism in America.
You know what? I think that's an excellent point. And I would say if one was going to teach Huck Finn in a class, I would probably teach either directly before or directly after something that takes place in urban, present day, more contemporary, by an African-American author who uses the N-word in a way more eloquent way, such as, A Raisin in the Sun or something like that.
Yes. And again, like, depending on how much you, as a school, want to have a book that uses language that can be triggering or whatever you want to call it, that can be a different conversation. But yes, I think the representation of the writers themselves and their lived experience is the thing that, to me, is the most problematic part about teaching Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, and trying to pretend like that's the only way that we can have free speech about this.
Yeah. Okay. I totally get what you're saying now, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And at this point, Jennifer feels that she needs to break this news to her mom and dad. Everything is so heightened emotionally, and the entire family finds out the news that this book, along with many other books, have been banned from their high school library, and the only word to describe the family is they are incredulous. They cannot believe that in 1987 that they are sitting there and permitting a library to tell their children and them what books they can and cannot read.
Yes. And like we were saying, you know, this nuanced conversation that you and I just had 30 years ago was one either you are for banning books or you are the most,
or you're in it.
or you're a hippie and you're the most on the side of Jesus ever. Not literally, because they were the people trying to ban the books.
Right. And we throughout this entire scene, in which basically the family, instead of calming Jennifer down, they stoke the fire of rebellion that lies within her.
Yes.
They sort of kind of goad her. They poke the bear. The entire scene, they poke the fucking bear. Like, come on, Jen. Come on, Jen. You're going to stand for this, Jen? Come on, Jen. This is wrong, Jen. This is wrong. Be like us. Be like us. Be like us, Jen. Come on. Mr. Flaherty, he's a bad guy. Mr. Flaherty's a bad guy. Come on, Jen. Let's go, Jen. Let's go, Jen. And that's really what happens. But throughout this entire scene, Alex almost sociopathically brings the conversation back to himself at various times about his big head and his small body.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, it's truly amazing how, like, they're having at a certain point during the second scene of the episode, I'm like, oh my God, this is like what Family Ties always kind of wanted to be, which was this like a bunch of politics discussions. And, you know, it's sort of like the 80s version of All in the Family. And you're like, between this episode and the last one that I just did with Scott about the blues, I was like, oh my God, they're really starting to get into the politics vein again. Like, they're throwing out all the stops of shit they want to talk about.
Well, this is the scene, I think, where this is the scene where we get our first taste of their expository vomiting of SCOTUS rulings.
This is where we find out that Alex P. Keaton, when backed into a corner and not allowed to do stuff he wants to do, identifies as a libertarian.
Well, we open the scene in the living room with Stephen reading to the family gathered round him, like FDR, reading Huckleberry Finn to the gather round, family. I'm going to read to you from old Huck Finn.
The irony of this is he's sitting there at the beginning of the scene reading Huck Finn, like he's concluding the passage, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what it was like when Stephen got to the 239 N-words in the novel. But then, folks, just give it time.
just hold on to your pantaloons for just a moment. We'll find out.
Oh.
So, you know, I think we were both. I was hoping against hope. I was sort of cognizant. I have a feeling we're going to get to that N-word pretty soon. And I wasn't sure whose mouth it was going to come out of. I was fairly sure it wasn't going to be Andy's.
Oh
boy. We find out that Mallory is confused between the concept of floating on a raft and going on a cruise. Damon, if that's what you're talking about, I'm sort of with you there.
That point I definitely agree. That is a little bit too much.
Yeah, okay. She was dumb as a fucking tack right there. And here's the word I just sort of circled and underlined and put a box around. Everybody in this episode, which moves so slowly because, you know, we know from the very first scene Jennifer's going to fight this, and we know it's a 2-part episode, so we know we're just really going to fight this. That's the episode. Jennifer's going to fight this. That's the whole episode. So throughout this, to stretch it out, what we explore is the feeling of everybody in the family being self-righteously indignant about the banning of books. They're all like, I'm going to get on my soapbox and I'm going to say a thing or two that it's wrong to ban books.
Yeah, Yeah, it's all like the free exchange of ideas libertarian model of nonsense. That all ideas should be given equal weight and heft, and if we don't talk about everything, then where does the line begin? And
So
living in this Nazi time that we live in, it's very easy to see the paradox of tolerance, which is a thing that you should look up, which is the people who are trying to hurt others and that are trying to dehumanize others take the tolerance that we give them in this free floating exchange of ideas and start pushing people out of the conversation and killing them. So, to say that all ideas should be given equal weight and heft, and by banning certain topics being problematic on its face, is just not true.
we have Alex quoting Supreme Court justice opinions as if he was in law school, when we all know he's studying as an undergraduate to be a business major.
He's an econ major, right? Yeah.
Right. So somehow or another, he can quote chapter and verse of Supreme Court decisions as if he was a third-year law school student.
Yes. Like, it's not like I just had Pico. I had to pull it up. I had to Google it. But Alex P. Keaton is able to just be like, oh yeah, this court case from 5 years ago, I got it.
And as I'm watching him, I was just thinking to myself, he doesn't sound like Alex P. Keaton. He sounds like another character, the character I call Paul Packler.
Obnoxious political.
All of a sudden, it was like, hey, he's not Alex, he's Paul. It's like, but this is Paul spouting the fuck. Who fucking emails me the SCOTUS decision earlier this week about banning the books? Paul Packler.
And it was the same one. He started saying what I sent you.
It was so funny. He's like, wow. And then I realized that we're sort of all on the same side in this thing. Nobody's really on the opposite side. We all believe that banning the books are wrong. We just believe it for different reasons.
It's weird. It's a very weird thing to find yourself in. I think I'm the one who's the most pro banning. And my banning doesn't mean banning from the library necessarily. It just means not teaching
right
in the class.
Right, which is a much more nuanced decision.
Right.
Stephen, at this point, when reading...
Here we go.
Stephen, at this point, when reading from the novel by Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, decides he would read a passage that includes white Anglo actor Michael Gross,
Chicago's own Michael Gross,
saying a passage in which Jim, with the epithet before Jim that starts with the N-word.
Yes.
N-word Jim.
I honestly was dumbfounded.
Right. Except he says it. Unlike you and I, who will steadfastly not say it.
No, this is 8:30 on a Thursday night in 1988, and people are tuning in after the Cosby Show, and you hear Michael Gross say the N-word. Holy fucking fuck.
That's what I thought. Yep. Holy fucking fuck. Stephen and Elise, and they sort of declare to Jennifer, we will support you. We will support you. And then Stephen gathers the family around for a moment that we've seen over and over, some memory from 1960 blah blah.
Yes, this is just like the time at Berkeley.
Yeah, where blah, 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 blah happens and nothing else, and it doesn't really add anything to the before or after of the story, and it just eats up about another 90 seconds, minute and a half, maybe 90. 2 minutes.
It's amazing, Corey, the fact that like we've gotten to the point on Family Ties that we feel like the children of the Keaton household, where every time they bring up Berkeley, we roll our eyes.
Absolutely. I'm a 17-year-old listening to my parents. It's like, holy shit, another one of these moments? Gather around, family. Come on, Keatons. And Alex sort of warns her, hey, you're putting your whole future on the line, Jennifer Keaton, if you decide that you want to, fight the banned books. And the look in her eyes of resolution, she's sort of like Gal Gadot in Wonder Woman of, I'm resolutely, Israeli, resolutely, I declare, that's my Israeli accent.
That's good.
Thanks. If you close your eyes, you can almost picture me being Gal Gadot. I declare that I will fight the bookman. Blackout. There we go to commercial.
Yeah. With that, we'll be right back.
I'll be back in 1 second, too.
Okay.
I'm back.
Big story out of the Times that just popped up while we were recording.
Yes?
Mueller expressly wants to ask Trump in an interview about the press release that Trump wrote for Don Jr. about the Russia meeting.
And the timing of that press release.
Oh, it just happened now, but it's... Oh, and the timing, of course. Yeah. But that they...
Right. In the chronology of meeting, statement publicly, statement privately, him crafting it, him saying that the lawyer crafted it. No, he crafted it. No, he didn't do it. The lawyer did it. Who did that? Okay.
Yeah. And it's one of my favorite parts of the Michael Wolff book is that all, except for the family and Hope Hicks, who were writing this memo, and Stephen Miller, everyone else that was on Air Force One was all hiding in a different room watching Fargo.
Very funny. Hope Hicks was doing what? Licking his balls?
I think so, yeah. Did you hear the thing that he said to her about when she had been fucking Corey Lewandowski and then... Oh, so during the campaign, she and Corey Lewandowski were dating, and when he got fired and was getting broiled in the press and everything, she asks Trump, she's like, is there anything that we can do to help him out? And Trump goes, he'll be fine. You did enough for him. You're the best piece of ass he'll ever have. And she cries and runs out of the room. Jesus fuck. That's our president.
Yep. He's a class act.
Anyway, so you ready to get going?
Let's get going.
Okay. And we're back. So the one thing I want to say about what just happened before we went to commercial is everyone says to Jennifer, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have to go up against a bunch of terrible things. There are going to be a lot of consequences for your action, but we're right behind you. The second half of this episode is all about Jennifer having those consequences and folding like a stack of dimes.
Cards. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Although, well, we'll get to the end. We open with the other students repeatedly doing the Yogi Berra story. And we ring that joke out almost immediately within 30 seconds. It's already done.
Yeah. I didn't know that he was not a sponsor, but a spokesman for Yoo-Hoo. That's something we learned this episode.
Well, you learned that, Paul. I didn't learn that. I'm from New York. I'm a baseball fan. I know the history of Yoo-Hoo, the chocolate flavored soft drink. relationship with baseball is long and storied, and he was the spokesperson for Yoo-hoo, America's favorite chocolate flavored soft drink. So, Paul, I understand you have this great relationship with sports and the sporting community.
Right, we're best friends.
Absolutely. So you do understand that there is a whole world out there of people who have more of a connection with like people like Yogi Berra, especially a New Yorker such as myself. You know, Yogi Berra both managed and played for both the Yankees and the Mets.
Did he? Is he the only one to do that?
Oh gosh, no, there have been a lot of players who played for the Yankees and the Mets, but he managed both the Yankees and the Mets in World Series, he is the only one to do that.
If I played for either the Yankees or if I played baseball, I wouldn't want to play in New York City. I would want to be in a smaller market where I could be like a bigger shit in the city. Like if I were living in like Cincinnati, and I could go out.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, to be the shit in that town is like a little bit, but you're still getting, you know, grade A pickings of the men or women that you want. I was going to use a crass term, but I decided against it because
This is growth, folks. We're growing.
I just thought better of it. I'd say it to you privately. I just can't do it publicly.
Here, let me pause this, and then you can say it, and then we'll start back up.
All right.
I'm not going to do that.
You're trying to get me into saying something. You know, it was anatomical. It was very Trumpian.
Yeah, of course.
Trumpian. Anyway, Jennifer, she has to get up in front of the whole class and do her Huck Finn report. It's an oral report that she has to do, and that's where we meet Mr. Flaherty. And I'm going to refer to Mr. Flaherty no longer as Mr. Flaherty, but you know what I'm going to call him, Paul? I think you'll be able to understand. I'm going to call him Poor Man's David Hyde Pierce.
That's who he is. I was like, why? While watching, I was trying to be like, what could I compare him to? He's like a character in an Oscar Wilde play or something.
The poor man's David Hyde Pierce is what he is.
It's perfect. That's perfect.
He looks at David Hyde Pierce and thinks, how did I fucking miss that boat? That guy's got 4 fucking Emmy Awards, and now he's a regular on Broadway, like it's going out of fucking style. And this douche doesn't even have a career any longer.
No, it's sad. This guy isn't bad, though. Do you think he's a bad actor? Do you think
not bad at all? I thought he's a very specific character, and at this time, I remember he worked quite steadily at this time as this character. And of course, he's, you know, a very prissy kind of persnickety English teacher. And if Jennifer persists on reading her Huckleberry Finn book report, I'm going to have to call Dr. Hewitt the principal. And everybody sort of gasps with Hewitt the Hun. Apparently that's her nickname, Hewitt the Hun.
It's terrible. Like, this character is the worst character. First of all, what happened to Principal Dr. Schulte? He's gone because ostensibly, for all intents and purposes, Jennifer is going to Harding High, like her sister and brother before her. But we have a new principal who's also a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Flaherty leans into the classroom and he yells for Billy to go and get the principal. And since Billy's not doing very well, he apologizes to Jennifer and he goes to get the principal, Hewitt.
Now, we are deep in the 80s at this point, and Billy is dressed like an extra from Saved by the Bell. He's wearing a lot of colors that are very garish. And he's wearing, are you ready, folks? Acid wash jeans.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
Whew.
Really?
God damn, they were the ugliest things ever. Corey, you were a young adult back then.
Yeah, I was practically a father.
You were younger than I am now back then.
Well, sure. If it's 87, this is airing in 87 now?
88, early 88.
Griffin was already a year old. Griffin was born in 87.
Do you have a lot of acid wash back then?
I'm not sure if I did, but maybe others did.
Did Griffin have a lot of acid wash jeans when he was 1?
When he was an infant, he had a lot of acid wash diapers.
Yeah.
Mr. Flaherty says to Jennifer something to the effect of, "The Keatons are never far from controversy."
It's a great read.
The Keatons are never far from controversy.
There's a moment during this when the kid runs off, Corey, that I don't know. Did you see this part too? He's like, "Sorry, Jen, I gotta go." And he runs around the corner. But that's the background of the shot. The foreground of the shot is Jennifer and Mr. Flaherty. The midground of the shot is a stairway that goes up to a different floor. So the kid, Billy, runs off into the background and makes a left. But then immediately from the midground comes a different kid who looks just like Billy, but he jumps down into this floor, onto the floor. He looks toward Jennifer and Mr. Flaherty. He goes, "Oh!" And then he runs right back up. There's no reason for it. It's brilliant.
Did I notice that? Yeah, I did.
I don't know whose kid he was that he got a shot.
That's hilarious. Did you notice that? Yeah, I'm afraid I did. Yeah.
It's so weird. I love it. I recommend this episode just for that moment.
You know what? I second it. I totally second the motion. If you have a moment, I'll estimate, it's probably around minute like 15, 16, 17, something like that in the episode. Go, just jump to it. It's in the school. It's in the hallway outside of the classroom. Sort of the scene sort of vacillates between inside the classroom and the hallway outside of the classroom. But just spend a moment looking at it because there is a kid that just sort of appears for no reason and then disappears for no reason.
He's nowhere else he's not from the classroom.
No. There's absolutely no explanation. You can't explain this in any kind of expository way that would make sense to anybody.
No, not in the slightest. So then Jennifer and Mr. Flaherty are standing there, and Dr. Principal, what's her name?
Dr. Hewitt the Hun. Right.
Yeah, comes and gives her an earful.
Right. And Jen is sort of forced, and she reads her book report in front of Hewitt the Hun, and Hewitt the Hun walks right up to Jennifer, right in front of Jennifer, right when Jennifer's about to start reading her book report. She rips it from her hands, and we go to the kitchen for the inevitable conclusion of part 1 of Read It and Weep.
So they're in the kitchen, and Jennifer tells them what happened, and everyone's very proud of her. Then Mr. Flaherty comes over, and I'm like, where's this going? Mr. Flaherty comes over to congratulate Jennifer on being so poised and doing the right thing, which, you know what, I was like, that's an interesting take, is that the teacher is just a bureaucrat who probably agrees with her ideologically, but at the same time is hemmed in by his job, by economics.
And as it turns out,
everybody, socialism, overthrow the state.
You couldn't be hitting the nail more squarely on the head, because what happens is that she even gets a phone call from another child's parent telling Stephen and Elise how proud they were to stand behind Jennifer in her crusade to get to be able to do a book report about Huck Finn, and Flaherty tells Stephen and Elise that they should be proud of their daughter's book report. It was the finest book report he's ever read on Huck Finn. Clearly, it was going to be given a very, very high grade if he had the leeway to give a high grade. Unfortunately, because the book isn't in the library, it doesn't exist. So basically, she gets a 0 or an F. She gets an F, a failure, on the book report. And she's suspended from school.
Boom. There's some reality drop right there, Jennifer Keaton.
Yeah, you thought, Jennifer, you were going to get away with what? I want to write about Huck Finn. Okay, Jennifer, you can write about Huck Finn. No way, lady. It's got the N-word in it, and we're not going to discuss it in class. That's all there is to it. It's going to cause trouble. End of discussion. That's it. Read something else.
Do you think this This is a weird question, and it's not necessarily legally rigorous. But in 6th grade, I was in a Stephen King kick because I'd watched the TV movie It.
Sure.
I read Pet Sematary for 6th grade reading class where you had to read books.
Mm-hmm.
And you just had to say that you read it. And I did. And I wrote Pet Sematary. I can't imagine that at my middle school they had Stephen King in the library for 11-year-olds. But
No.
so what I'm saying is, like, if she turns in the report, she doesn't say it out loud, but they have the written proof that she did the work, even though they don't acknowledge that the book is something that is teachable. Wouldn't they just give her the A?
You
Or
see,
at worst a C?
yeah.
I mean, this we're arguing dramatic nonsense in an '80s sitcom, but like, I don't know. It just seems like there's no reason to fail her just because the book doesn't apply.
I don't see it either, and yet, if of course for you know, she will not back down, and they will not back down. So we end part one of this two-parter with them sort of butting heads like two rams with each other, and we'll see what happens when we next see part two with a very interesting guest star performance.
Oh, I didn't listen. I don't even want to ask you because this is the first time in the history of Family Ties that in a cliffhanger 2-part episode, I'm actually looking forward to see how this turns out. Because, like we said before, the Pico ruling at the Supreme Court doesn't really explicitly say what the law is with regard to banning books. I don't know who this mystery guest is that you're alluding to. And
Well,
I'm just curious how what the hell else they can wring from this nonsense.
I will tell you that probably the second most heralded guest star that's ever been on the show thus far, after Mr. Hanks, in spite of the fact that there's been another Oscar winner on the show, Gina Davis. So you know what I'm saying? It's hard to say. This person is multi-awarded, but no Oscar, but is incredibly well awarded elsewhere.
Holy shit, Corey. If I had to, can I guess? Is it all right if I guess?
Go ahead.
If it were me, I would try to get Hal Holbrook, who has famously done his Mark Twain one-man show around the country for like 40 years. I would try to do a dream scene where Mark Twain visits Jennifer to talk about the book.
And maybe we can get Denzel to play Jim in this. Elsewhere, Denzel. So you know it's around the right time.
Holy shit! I forgot he was on St. Elsewhere.
He was a TV star before he was a movie star. So
wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wrong. I really thought it was Hal Holbrook.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. It's not Hal Holbrook. But when we next speak the second part of this episode, I will also will be able to report on Logan's close relationship with Michael J. Fox's mother from the Back to the Future movies. That's this Friday.
Yeah, tell everybody what's going to happen.
Yeah, we found out, and this was a weird one because normally we find out about 4 or 5 weeks in advance if Logan's going to be on American Housewife, because that's how in advance the episodes are written. As soon as they break the story and they know that he's in the story, they reserve him for the episode as far in advance as they possibly can. But this one, we got a phone call on Friday. This past Friday for an episode that started shooting this past Monday, a couple of days ago. So we figured, oh, they must have had the table read, and then they had to rewrite a part of the episode. There was a scene, and they needed to throw in, and as it turned out, they threw in a bunch of recurring characters on the show or in this one big scene. So Logan's going in just for one day this week for an emergency scene that they needed to make some joke work. And it turns out that this week's episode is being directed by Leah Thompson, Michael J. Fox's mom from the Back to the Future movies.
Lorraine Baines. Amazing.
So our second Michael J. Fox connection, first we had John Putch, who's done 3 episodes of character work as an actor. He's directed an episode.
Right.
And Logan's worked with him a couple of times, and I think he's going to work with him again later on this season. He's got another big episode, I think, that John's directing. And
have you or Logan talked to John about his time on Family Ties at all?
Have not. Logan just became very good, sort of hung out with him the last time they worked together.
Oh, wow.
They were hanging out during a break. They were throwing a football around together. John was very, very nice to Logan the last time. First time, I think he sort of just thought, he's a kid actor. And this time, he actually came over to him and put his arms around him at one point, and he said, "You're the only actor on the set who I see practices his blocking. And as a theater director, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that."
Oh, shit. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. He said, "I notice when somebody actually stands there and goes through the paces of where they're moving to." And he said, "You do that before the cameras are rolling. So I really appreciate you. Saved me a lot of time."
A pro. Logan's already a consummate pro.
He works really, really well. So that's good. So I'll let you know what goes on with the Leah Thompson, our Leah Thompson experience. You know, Helen Hunt just directed an episode of the show, too.
I didn't know she was directing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
She directed an episode, and they've had they've had a lot of women directors. In fact, John Putch commented that he's grateful for the job because in TV sitcom world right now, being a white male director is the death sentence.
Interesting.
They're hiring people of color and women directors.
A+. Good job, TV.
Yeah. So on Logan's show, they've had Melissa Kosar has directed a whole bunch of episodes. She's a really, really cool lady who's directed a lot of TV stuff. And they've also had the late Elizabeth Montgomery's daughter from Bewitched.
Oh, wow.
Her name is Rebecca Asher. William Asher and Elizabeth Montgomery's daughter looks remarkably like Elizabeth Montgomery.
Wow.
And she's directed a whole bunch of episodes. They've had Helen Hunt and now Leah Thompson. So a whole bunch of women directors. Very, very cool. They've had women directors and they've had a few directors of color, which is very cool also.
That's great. Well, all right. I mean, I think this is maybe our best lead off into a 2-part episode.
Yes.
There's so much information from us that you are, as our audience, looking forward to finding out. So with that,
cliffhanger,
we'll take our leave. Mm-hmm. Please rate and review our show on iTunes. For questions and comments, email us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at QTWFT for updates. You can follow each of us. I'm at Paul Packler.
I'm at Corpep, and Scott's at Follow Jones.
And you can like us on Facebook. We'd like to thank our host and producer, Barbara Dillon, at Fanbase Press. Fanbase Press is a comic book publisher and an online community supporting creators and fans through daily reviews, interviews, and podcasts that span the pop culture spectrum. Check them out, fanbasepress.com. We'd like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs Family Ties and our theme song, Without Us. Check out Perry's website, perryadams.com. We'd like to thank Bryant Dillon, who created our fantastic drawing and artwork, as well as edits our show. Bryant is the president and co-founder of Fanbase Press. Follow him on Twitter at Comic Book Slayer. Finally, Sean Foster, Fanbase Press's graphic designer, for designing our logo. Gang, we'll see you next week.
Sha-la-la-la.
Bye.